Hello and welcome to this episode of the Veterans History Project, Santa Clarita Valley Edition. The Veterans History Project is an initiative of the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress. The Santa Clarita Valley Edition is spearheaded by College of the Canyons in association with SCV TV, the SCV Senior Center, and Vets Back to the War Zone. My name is Leon Worden. Today is November 8th, 2009, and we've come out to Agua Dulce, California today to catch up with a very special veteran of the United States Army during World War II. His name is George T. Joe Sakato, and I'm going to read a little bit about him because he is a recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor. Uncle Joe, as he's known to his friends and family here in Agua Dulce, enlisted and served in Company E, 442nd Regimental Combat Team, the most highly decorated unit in U.S. military history, thank you. And he was sent to Europe in 1944. At the time he was released from active duty, he was presented the Distinguished Service Cross, which was later upgraded to the Congressional Medal of Honor, 55 years later, under President Bill Clinton. The citation accompanying his Congressional Medal of Honor says the following: Private George T. Sakato distinguished himself by extraordinary heroism in action on 29 October 1944 on Hill 617 in the vicinity of Bifontaine, France. After his platoon had virtually destroyed 2 enemy defense lines, during which he personally killed 5 enemy soldiers and captured 4, his unit was pinned down by heavy enemy fire. Disregarding the enemy fire, Private Sakato made a one-man rush that encouraged his platoon to charge and destroy the enemy strongpoint. While his platoon was reorganizing, he proved to be the inspiration of his squad in halting a counterattack on the left flank during which his squad leader was killed. Taking charge of the squad, he continued his relentless tactics, using an enemy rifle and a P-38 pistol to stop an organized enemy attack. During this entire action, he killed 12 and wounded 2, personally captured 4, and assisted his platoon in taking 34 prisoners. And as you can hear from his surname, Sakato, Joe, Uncle Joe, is a Japanese American, and it was a particularly interesting time for Japanese Americans in this country, especially those who were serving in the United States Army. Joe, let's start at the beginning. Name, rank, serial number. Where were you born?
Colton, California. My name is George T. Joe Sakato. My dad wanted to call me Joe Taro Sakato, and he saw in the paper GEO, so he says, "Oh, that's Joe." He gave that to the doctor. The doctor looked at it, so that's all right. But the vital statistics looked at it, and it says, "That's abbreviation for George." So my birth certificate came out George T. Sakato. All my life I've been called Joe. And then I get to high school and they says, "You better start using your real name. Your birth certificate says George. You have to sign everything George." So it became George Sakato.
So your father wasn't all that well versed in the English language, or what was the situation? Was he an immigrant himself?
He's an immigrant himself. He came from Japan, and he became barbers in Colton, California. But he could read some English, so to him, GEO was Joe. So he said, "Oh, well, that is Joe." But I did have another brother named George Toru Sakato, but he died 20 years younger. And then, so my dad wanted to call me Joe Taro. So he sees GEO, but he didn't recall the George of the other one. And so, but that's why it became Joe. They call me Joe all the time, and then the birth certificate says George, so I had to go by George. And I went into the Army as George.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, our west coast became a potential combat zone. Living in that zone were more than 100,000 persons of Japanese ancestry. 2/3 of them American citizens, 1/3 aliens. No one knew what would happen among this concentrated population if Japanese forces should try to invade our shores. Military authorities therefore determined that all of them, citizens and aliens alike, would have to move. The commanding general of the Western Defense Command determined that all Japanese within the coastal area should move inland. Notices were posted. All persons of Japanese descent were required to register. Now the actual migration got underway. The Army provided fleets of vans to transport household belongings and buses to move the people to assembly centers. Behind them, they left shops and homes they had occupied for many years. At Manzanar, they built a lath house and began rooting guayuli cuttings. The plants, when mature, will add to our rubber supply. Meanwhile, in Arizona, Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, and elsewhere, quarters were being built where they would have an opportunity to work and more space in which to live. In areas away from the coast and under appropriate safeguards, many were permitted to enter private employment, particularly to work in sugar beet fields where labor was badly needed. Now, this brief picture is actually the prologue to a story that is yet to be told. The full story will be told only when circumstances permit the loyal American citizens once again to enjoy the freedom we in this country cherish, and when the disloyal, we hope, have left this country for good.
We had a grocery store in Redlands, and I was opening up the store on December the 7th, Sunday, and I heard the radio. Roosevelt was on the radio then. Pearl Harbor was bombed, and we couldn't believe it. Pearl Harbor being bombed by the Japanese. Oh my God! Now what do we do? So this, while I was going through, I graduated from high school. Had just graduated that year, and so all of my classmates said they were sorry to hear that Japan had bombed Pearl Harbor, and that we were going to eventually have to move somewhere or get out or go to the camps. So when they said they had to go to camps, they gave us 3 days to move out or go to camp. So we sold the meat case for $300 and threw it in the store and packed up and went to Phoenix, Arizona. And we was on the south side of the tracks, and they said, well, you're going to have to move again because south of Grand Avenue and the railroad tracks, you're going to have to go to Poston. So I finally had to move to the north side of the tracks. A gentleman offered us to live on his back porch, and we work on his farm. So I worked on his farm, and after half a season of sweating 110 degrees, I lost 35 pounds, and I said, I'm no farmer, I need to get out of here. So the gentleman offered me to work in his grocery store, and I worked in his grocery store for a while. And in the meantime, the 100th Battalion with the National Guards of Hawaii were in Hawaii, and they didn't know what to do with them. They sent them to Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, and shipped. From there, they shipped them over to Sicily and joined General Mark Clark. So I tried to join the Air Force in '43, and the draft card says 4C, enemy alien. What do you mean enemy alien? I'm an American. I was born and raised. Well, the draft card says 4C, we can accept you. But in the meantime, the 100th Battalion of the National Guards of Hawaii went to Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, and went overseas to Italy, joined General Mark Clark. And when Anzio and their various battles in the Mount Cassino, there was a church on top of a hill, and they were to attack that hill, and they would get shot and killed, and so they became known as the Purple Heart Battalion. For General Mark Clark said, I want more soldiers like this. Couldn't you do that? So therefore, Roosevelt signed a decree that we could join the army after that. Mm-hmm. So all these, in the meantime, all the Californians and all the coast had to go to camps. They were put in relocation centers, Poston, Gila, Heart Mountain, Jerome, and Roar, and all the various camps, and then since we evacuated prior to enforcement going to camps, we was able to stay in the northern part of Phoenix. So then I said, well, I'm going to join the Army again. So then I volunteered for the Air Force again and signed up. And they went to Fort Douglas, Utah, and got inducted, and went to Camp Blanding, Florida. And I'm looking out in the airport, because where's the airplanes? You're in the infantry. The 100 Battalion needs a replacement. You're a replacement. So I was an infantryman.
So what did you feel about being cannon fodder?
Oh, what can that was bad. They used us, I don't know how many times we had to go into battle. One time was the worst one, is when I just got off the line. I was missing in action, and I was down at the bottom of the hill, and I couldn't climb the hill back. So when I finally got top of the hill, the squad was gone. They thought I got shot down there. So I'm up there for 6 hours waiting around. All the German patrol comes by, and another patrol comes by, and I asked him, what company is this? And he's ready to shoot me because I didn't know the password. So I got back to the company in the headquarters. Then the captain says, well, you got to go see this colonel on such and such a slope. And he wanted to find out where his men were. So we had to pack up. This one fellow was writing up a citation for that hill that we had taken, which I was missing in action for. When we got back, we met this colonel, and once his men is up in ahead 1,000 yards or so. So we went up there and saw them. They were dug in, and they had foxholes. And then the lieutenant there says, "We'll see where the Germans are at." And I says, "Why do we have to go see where the Germans? Why can't they go find where the Germans are at?" He says, "He didn't have orders." What do you mean he didn't have orders? So we had to go out and find where the Germans are. We got pinned down machine guns. I hit the ground and I rolled over and got behind a bush. The other fellows from Pueblo, Colorado was on my left, and the fellows writing the citation was on my right, and a guy named Friday was on the right of him. A German sniper had his targeted in. He had his telescopic sights, and the fellow on my left, he lifted his head and pow, right to the temple and back of his helmet. And the fellow to the right, the college student next to me, he looked up, he got shot. And on Friday, he looked up, and the sniper caught him. And the sniper was looking for me, but I was behind this bush, he couldn't see me. So I had to back up. Went to the squad platoon that was in the foxhole. I said, "How come you didn't come to help us?" "We didn't have orders." "What do you mean you didn't have orders? You didn't have to have orders." So I think this is where we use part of a cannon fodder then. And another time we come back, so we had to go another hills and all these various hills. And I was walking this one ridge, and then I was walking, following this road, and it went so far and it turned to the right. And then I was walking, and machine gun opened up ahead, and so I was on the right side because I had Thompson submachine gun, and the others were on the up top of the hill and on the other side of the ridge. And I told one of the boys that I was going to go down, cross the road and go below, and the German would have to get off his foxhole to shoot at me because he has to get out to shoot down at me. I'm down below, and I went across, and it's the curve of the road, and I got up. I saw this big tree trunk, and so I'll get behind that tree trunk for protection. And I saw two Germans running up the hill, so I fired over there. Missed them, but something was moving to the left side of that log, silvery metal, and inch by inch, and slowly coming up was a machine gun. And on the right side of him was two hands coming up, Lieutenant. That was the machine gun nest there. That was my first machine gun nest. So I told the lieutenant to give me his pistol, the governor to drop his pistol and the machine gun. Then the rest of the company came over and so then we had to go to another hill. And this other hill is called 617. And the 141st Battalion was surrounded, and we were to rescue them again. Now we were cannon fodder again. 142nd could not rescue the 141st Division. 143rd could not rescue the 141st. They had the Wehrmacht troop, the specialty German troops, and they had orders to annihilate the 141st, no matter what the cost. And so we were in a bunch of trees here, and we saw a meadow and a train tracks and a meadow and this big hill, that rocky ledge like this, sloping down. I'm looking at that mountain, and I says, how are we going to climb that thing? How are we going to get on top of that? Straight up here. And they had to go around this way. So that afternoon, we got on trucks and went around behind 7th Army, and went around, and we got on the back end of this hill. On the other side of that hill, all the Germans were, it's for the Lost Battalion. So we stayed on this edge, and we didn't make a sound, and we crawled half a step at a time, because at night you couldn't see your hands in front of you. You had to look up, see the main trunk, see the branches coming down. There's a tree there, so avoid hitting that one, and you see the branches come down on another tree there. So all night we're traveling half a step at a time till we got to this edge, and at dawn we spread out. F Company went up here, and we went down here, and we chased the German off this hill. And they all went back. The main forces were over here. And then I Company and those were coming into this valley here, and there were a bunch of hills this side. The hills, the Germans on this side would shoot at them, and Germans on this side would shoot at them. So I Company, 3rd Battalion, caught hell. They lost more men. And then, so after we took the hill, well, the artillery could come in. So we had to jump in the German foxholes. And we thought we jumped in foxholes, and then we thought, okay, bam, and stop, counterattack. The Germans were going to come back again. The Germans that escaped here went this hill. They came across one to come over. So I had to shoot at these Germans here. I had 2 clips together. Every time 8 or 10 rounds went out. Click. Click. And one German was coming up. He's going to just throw a grenade at me, and I'm looking. I couldn't get my other clip out. And I picked up a German rifle, and he had no ammunition. Well, I had the pistol, so I fired 3 rounds. He either hit him or he just dropped. Then they got down in the hole, and I filling up my clips. The Germans went around me when I was down in the hole, and went up this hill. Took this hill back. I said, oh, watch out for the Germans. And the guys stood up and says, where? And he got shot, and I crawled over this hole, and I said, why did you get up? He gurgled, and he went limp on me, and he died in my arms, and I cried, and I go, you son of a bitches. I threw my pack up and filled out my clips up and ran up the hill. I zigzagged up the hill this time. I couldn't fire the rifle this way. It would go, so I set to the sides, I would fire this way. Target was there, I would fire over here, and so back and forth I would going up the hill. I killed 5 or 6 of them, but they said I killed 12. And then other times, the others were giving up, surrendering. So then altogether we had 34 prisoners. Came back, then we had to go to this other hill. And this other hill to all the forces were going after the lost battalion to rescue the 281 men that were surrounded for weeks. 4 or 5 air squadrons were dropping belly tanks with food and ammunition into, and tried to drop the parachute down to him. He caught a tree or rolled down the hill, and not very few of them got down there all right. And then when he finally got, then the artillery started coming in, and I got blown up. I couldn't use my hands.
So you were injured?
So I got blown up and I was injured. I had an overcoat. That overcoat saved my life, but the shrapnel went all the way through that, hit my spine, ricocheted.
It hit your spine?
Hit my spine, and it's still in here. So I have that souvenir in here yet.
Did that affect your ability your mobility?
Yeah, for a while I couldn't move my arm this way. So something just went, so I could move it this way, but I couldn't move my elbow from my shoulder. So then after 9 months of hospital, climbing ladders and things.
Where were you in the hospital?
I was in Epinal, France, and they put me on a plane to go to England, and the weather changed, it bounced me off. So Christmas and Thanksgiving, Christmas and New Year's, I was in Epinal, and then they finally went to England for a couple of months, and then I went to New York, and then from there I went to Vancouver, Washington. He had a hospital there, and my kid brother sent me a newspaper clipping from my hometown, Redlands, California, that I received a Distinguished Service Cross.
Surprise!
When does that happen? I don't know anything about it. So I had to tell the chaplain over there in Vancouver, Washington. I said, I didn't see it. Then 2 months later, I had to go to San Diego. San Diego still didn't come. Day of discharge, the medal came. So I said, well, I don't have time. The band's on furlough, but I said, I don't have to. Boys from Hawaii go to plane. They're going to fly back to Hawaii. So you have to change their flight plans. So he pinned the medal on his office.
And the one that you're wearing around your neck, the Congressional Medal of Honor, you're in a pretty exclusive club with that one.
That one I didn't know till 55 years late. Pentagon calls and says, George, we want you to come to the White House. What for? We're going to upgrade your Distinguished Service Cross the Medal of Honor. Somebody's pulling my leg, and I said, no, what? And I didn't say anything for a while, and he says, are you there? And I said, yeah. He says, I thought you had a heart attack. I just about did. I said, but.
So this was just a few years ago.
In 2000, June of 2000. So President Clinton, it so happened that a Saudi prince has come to Washington. They put up this big tent, and they had this ceremony. So we finally got into that ceremony with that 500 of us in that tent, and they gave me the medal. I'm not a hero. I don't deserve this medal. I told a reporter that I said, you know, come to think of it, nowadays we call it road rage. And so George Bush found out about it. So I went back for the dedication of the World War II Memorial. And then all the generals were speaking and everything, and I was sitting there hot, tired, sleep. And I hear Joe Sakato, and I said, who in Washington knows the Joe Sakato? Then the other recipient says, George, the president's talking about you, huh? So during the dedication, he mentioned my name for the memorial. And like I say, I don't wear this as a hero. I worked for those guys that didn't come home. I had first day of battle in France. We got blown up, and one guy died on me. Another time, these 4 guys got killed, shot. Another time, some other guys got shot.
Just tell me a couple things. Was your unit integrated? Was it mostly Asian American?
All Japanese American. We all volunteered from the camps. In the Hawaii plantations of sugarcane fields and pineapple fields. They all came in. So we came to Camp Shelby, Mississippi, and became the Regimental Combat Team. We had infantry, we had cannon company, we had engineers, we had field artillery. And so we all one special unit that we could move together.
What kind of training did you have to prepare you to actually go into battle and where you had to kill people?
8 weeks of basic training.
And that's it?
You know, going through these basic, jumping this hole or jumping on a rope and climbing across the little pond, or climbing this fence, 8-foot fence. I could never climb that. My first flight, it took us 28 days to get overseas to Naples and to join the company. And when I did join the company, then we went to France, because the 442 and 100 Battalion already went up to Rome and come back, and then I was a replacement. So we joined them in Italy. Then went to France, and the first day of battle, I'm trying to climb this hill. I couldn't climb this damn hill. I had somebody else carry my pack. When I got to the top of the hill, and the first day, we didn't know what incoming and outgoing was, and we hear this weird sound. Boom! I found out that was incoming. I picked myself up 10 feet over. I got black and blue, and I got a nick here, and I looked out and see my buddy, a friend, volunteered too also. He was laying down, and I turned him over, and his jugular vein, and all the blood was just, and he lost too much blood, and he died on the way down.
Is there any message that you would have for today's youngsters who are thinking about joining the military?
Get your education as you can, and then we do need an army. So if you could volunteer, it's fine. But I'd like to see the draft. I hate to say this, but a draft has done so much good for kids that are no discipline, and at least they learn discipline, and they become better kids rather than having gangs and stuff like that. If they could, and then we'll always have an army. If they could do 2 years, and another 2 years, and another 2 years. In Europe, all the other countries, they're training when they were kids to become soldiers. They have an army. We don't have an army.
Well, Joe, I want to thank you so much for both for your service and for sharing your story with us today, and appreciate it.